Hello all and welcome to the 2023 Southeast Collaborative Online Conference. My name is Laurie Thompson and I'm your host for this session. This event is sponsored through funding from the Library Science and Technology Act through the Institute of Museum and Library Science. And this is managing your library facility. Please feel free to ask questions and make comments or chat in the Whova app. You will be chatting with other attendees and your speaker. So now I'd like to introduce Casey Williams. Casey, thank you for being with us. We really appreciate this. This is one of my favorite topics today.
Thank you, Lori. I'm really excited to be here and to share this information. Could you enable screen share for me?
I think you have it.
All right, welcome everyone. This session is managing your library facility, and my name is Kaurri C. Williams-Cockfield, but I go by Casey Williams. And I invite you after the session to email me with any questions you might have outside of the regular Q&A. A little bit about me. I'm a retired public library director, and I've built a few buildings, I've renovated a few buildings, and I've managed buildings for about 20 years. And oh, if those walls could talk, the stories they would tell. Our outcomes for this webinar are understanding the importance of facility oversight, identifying processes that will help you manage and maintain your library buildings, create a list of questions to ask about your library building operation, learn about tools for managing your library building, share library building operation stories, and to develop a broad construct for troubleshooting library building issues. So we're going to start with just basically what is facility oversight. All the internal and external physical plant components, buildings, operating systems, plumbing, electrical, tech, infrastructure, etc. Facilities operations refers to the management of all the processes, people, and assets required for a facility to do what it's designed to do. And it also refers to the day-to-day operations of the facility, as well as consideration and execution of future maintenance and improvement needs. Libraries typically don't have the facilities operations support staff, and librarians find themselves in the role of playing operations manager. And so if you find yourself in that role, these are the key responsibility areas. Maintaining an inventory of physical assets and the management of those assets, tracking the maintenance of facilities and physical assets from preventative maintenance to scheduled maintenance to emergency repairs, the knowledge and use of computer systems for utilizing and managing facilities, the creation, maintenance, and use of facility-specific manuals to assist with the processes, methods, equipment, and tools, as well as the maintenance schedules that must be adhered to manage a facility. Management of maintenance staff, as well as consideration of how they operate most efficiently. Project management, given that the requirements of facility operations span so many disciplines, facility operators must be able to effectively define and prioritize needs, manage costs and procedures, and execute various management and maintenance projects simultaneously. And you need to be able to do all that while you're managing your library. Consideration and implementation of sustainable practices, and conducting risk management assessments and proposing and executing corrective measures. There are basically 5 facility maintenance components or areas. And these areas are safety, the building envelope, emergency management, flooring, and planning and recording. Safety refers to exterior lighting, your security systems, addressing trip hazards, handicap access, fire alarms, smoke detectors, having clearly marked exits, clear passageways, and safety warning signs. Your building envelope refers to your roof warranty, roof leaks, the condition of the exterior walls, windows, and window sills. Emergency management or energy management deals with electrical lighting, your HVAC systems, building energy management system, humidity control, etc. And this is where a lot of specialty software comes in. If you have a HVAC system, then that system is run by software, and someone needs to understand how to go in and set the controls and troubleshoot and read the troubleshooting error messages so that they can coordinate with a repair vendor. And then flooring. This is your floor surface maintenance and lifespan. And the most important part of all of this is planning and recording. What are the maintenance requirements for all of your pieces of equipment and components? Who are your vendors? How are you going to keep up with when you have repairs done, when repairs are due, who did them, what the outcome was, and then developing your maintenance plan. So let's talk just a little bit about hazard versus risk. And this is a useful conversation because if you are going to present a proposal to your governing body about building improvements, learning to speak in terms of hazards versus risk will get their attention, because operations managers at a government level are all about hazard and risk. So a hazard is something that poses a threat to the life, health, property, and the environment. And a risk is the chance that someone or something will be hurt by that hazard. For example, having openly accessible electric plugs on the outside of your building is a hazard. The risk is that a homeless person might use a plug-in hot plate outside in your flower bed and leave a pot of soup cooking unattended because they could plug into that openly accessible plug on the outside of the building. And that can be a real liability. So think about this as we go through and talk about risk and hazard. What immediate hazards come to mind when you think about your library building? So here are just some examples. You have chip tile, bunch carpeting, or torn linoleum. That's a hazard. The risk is that someone will trip, fall, and injure themselves, making it a liability risk. Insufficient exterior and interior building illumination increases the risk of personal harm to people from injury or assault, damage to or theft of personal property, which is also a liability risk. Having an insufficient number of service staff on the floor and or poor line of sight visibility from service desk increases risk of malicious mischief and or theft and damage to the building and contents. Computer cords, cables exposed and run across the floor, trip and fall injury, personal injury, building fire potential. These are all liabilities. And having a poor heating and cooling system promotes mold growth in a building, damage to materials, staff and patron illness, and it's also a liability risk. So if you think about all the things in your building that need attention, and you can tie them specifically to liability on the part of your governing body, then you're going to get their attention, and it will help you make your case for building improvements. So these are some considerations. Can you clearly identify the problem? What other departments will you need to work with or get input from? Can you cover the costs for addressing the problem in your budget? Will you need to get funding from another source? If so, who? Is it your friends? Is it your foundation? What is the process for procuring additional funds? Do you have to do requests for proposals? Do you have to do bids? Do you need quotes or bids? Does your city, county have a list of bid holders? Typically they do. What vendors do you need to talk with? What research do you need to do to be knowledgeable about the problem? This is where having your maintenance manuals and the manuals about your equipment operations and having all of your records handy about when things were done is very, very important. I was able to get a new HVAC system in one of my buildings because I had 3 years of records showing that we'd spent the cost and maintenance of that HVAC system over 3 years when we could have bought a new one for less money. So it's very important to keep those records. Does your library board need to be involved in any of the decisions? What are the other considerations, and approximately how long will it take to get through these processes? If you need to do quotes or bids, then you can expect a 3 to 4 month turnaround on the process. Unless you're able to work directly with a vendor that is your county or city approved vendor. Typically, you're not going to have a really large capital budget, and most of these are going to be capital expenses. So you're going to need to either ask for additional funding through your governing funding body, or you're going to need to seek outside sources, grants, your friends or your foundation. So the first thing you need to do if you're at a place where you're not sure, you know you need to do facility work, but you don't know where to start. And then you start with an assessment of your facility. And I have up here a picture of the Cayman Islands Main Library. I had the pleasure of being the library director for the Cayman Islands for 2 years on an expat contract. And I really was spoiled by the buildings that are available in the US. When I got to the Cayman Islands, this is their main library. And it's a very interesting building. The back of the building, the 3-story building is, or 4-story, it's actually 4 stories, is brand new or new within the past 15 years. It has good insulation and good HVAC systems and all of the things you would expect in a new building. But it's connected by a hallway or a little breezeway with swinging glass doors into the original part of the building. And it's the original part of the building is concrete block. It's not going anywhere. It's built to withstand storms, but it has no insulation. It has a heating and cooling system that is piping run around or tubing run around the top of the ceiling. And all of the windows are old original windows. They open and close. They're not double paned. So it made it very, very difficult. Here's this space, and it's a very beautiful space that was almost completely unusable because it couldn't be cooled to the level you needed to cool it to be able to use it. So if you did want to use it, you had to open all the windows and the doors, and it's very hot in the Cayman Islands. And so then you had the back and forth between the two buildings, which increased the temperature in the building that was insulated. And so you had a lot of humidity exchange. So it's a very difficult building to manage, but still beautiful. So what you're going to do is you're going to conduct an in-depth facility evaluation. And I have given you in your documents an in-depth facility maintenance checklist. It's probably 15 or 20 pages long, and it will give you a baseline for your building. I would recommend that you create a facility maintenance checklist. If you have someone on staff that works in your facility, even if it's custodial, if they know a little bit about buildings, have them walk through it with you. Have board members complete one, and have county city operations manager complete one. Then sit down and compare the notes and come up with a plan for addressing any issues. And you're going to have 3 different types of issues. You're going to have things that are on the hazard list that you need to address ASAP. Then you're going to have just your regular ongoing scheduled maintenance. And then you're going to have an improvement plan for things that are working right now, but you know in the next 3, 5, 10, 15 years, you're going to need to do a complete overhaul of. So that way you lay out your plan and then you can manage your money. You know what to ask for every year, and you take care of this elephant one little bite at a time, and everybody's on the same page. Let's talk a little bit about strategic planning. Facility oversight should be part of strategic planning, and often it's the area that we leave out for lots of reasons. Maybe we don't know a lot about managing the facility, or we have a facility department that's supposed to do it. But often when that happens, they're reactive. They come in and they fix problems that have already occurred, which is not the most efficient or effective way to manage your facility. So things you need to think about. How does your library team address facility maintenance? Does something occur and you fill out a form and it goes to county or city maintenance and they put it on a list and they eventually take care of it? Do you make a phone call to your facilities management operator on the city or county level and say, oh my gosh, I've got a flood, and they run over and they patch it or take care of it really quickly? Or do you have it in your library's planning process already? And is it in your library's budget process? So think about these processes are what are going to make the actual management of your facility something that you can do along with your additional library management responsibilities or library administration responsibilities. So think about what works about your process and where you could improve your process. And then let's talk about deferred maintenance. Almost every library in existence deals with deferred maintenance because of some of the issues that I've mentioned. And eventually, a deferred maintenance will destroy your building. So it's very important when you're looking at your planning, your strategic planning, and you're developing your long-term steps, that you identify what deferred maintenance exists and what the priorities for addressing the deferred maintenance are. You often need to get an engineer in to go through your building and do an evaluation. It can cost anywhere from $50,000 to $100,000, depending on the size of your building, to have an engineer come in and look at it. But it's money well spent if you're going to start working toward being proactive with your building maintenance. So deferred maintenance refers to maintenance system upgrades or repairs that are deferred to a future budget cycle or postponed until funding becomes available. To address a deferred maintenance backlog, you must identify why projects, maintenance, and repairs have been deferred, recognize and understand the scale of the problem, quantify and communicate the financial impact of deferred maintenance, prioritize projects and develop strategy to secure adequate funding, and conduct preventative maintenance and complete repairs promptly to avoid backlog redevelopment. So deferred maintenance is the big monster in the room, and we chip away at it a little at a time. But having a good 5-year plan for addressing deferred maintenance and having the estimated cost from an engineer on what each year will cost to improve will help you get that funding from your funding body, because the building is their investment. And they really do want buildings to be in good states. But we're all dealing with a lack of staff, and knowing your building and knowing exactly what your building is going to need to remain functional in an effective manner is very important. It's important to the safety of your patrons and to your staff. So steps in existing deferred maintenance. You're going to conduct a facility assessment or audit. You're going to evaluate the building's condition and code compliance, which is where you need an engineer. You're going to document the performance and age of all finishes, systems, and equipment. You'll consult with the facilities professionals most familiar with your building, the HVAC technician that services the physical plant regularly and can provide system performance history. Or you're going to have your logbooks where you've recorded everything that's broken and been repaired and the cost. Quantify and communicate the financial impact of deferred maintenance. Speak in the terms that your city and county government understands. It's all about hazard and risk. Prioritize projects and develop a strategy to secure adequate funding. Conduct preventative maintenance and complete repairs promptly to minimize the facility's rate of decay. Now, I was the manager or the director of Blount County Public Library in Maryville, Tennessee. And we had, the building was built in 2002. And we had an engineer come in a couple of years ago and do a review of the building, and the cost to make the repairs that were identified in deferred maintenance was in excess of $4 million. So that's a big chunk, and priorities were set. And at this point in time, only a small bit of the deferred maintenance has been addressed, but the most important things, getting a new roof because there was constant leakage, and improving the flooring finishes so that it was safe for people to be in the building, have been taken care of. So it happens, it's just very slow. Record keeping. So how do you keep building operation records? And I've said this multiple times, that record keeping is vital. You need to maintain a history of repairs. You need to have your contracts handy and know what they cover. You need to have the information for operating your systems, the software systems, the building systems. If there's panels you have to operate, and you need to know who your vendors are and have phone call relationships with them. You need to be able to pick up the phone and call. I stayed on my HVAC system. Managers. I had the vendor on speed dial because it was a failing system. And every time it failed, I had to close my building, and I didn't want to close my building. So he was very Johnny on the spot and a very good vendor, but it's because I worked hard to have that relationship with him. I think he might've been a little scared of me, but in any case, the relationship worked. So a good record keeping system is important because it allows you to track all repairs and maintenance to your building and equipment. Frequent repairs often indicate that the building component or equipment is nearing its lifespan. Methods for tracking include maintenance work order software, spreadsheets, a written log sheet, copies of purchase orders and payments, copies of contracts. Even if you don't have the time to set up an elaborate scheme for keeping up with your records, if you just have files in your desk where every time a purchase order is activated to have a repair, you keep a copy of it in a folder. That's equipment repairs. And then you keep a copy of all your contracts, and you can do it year by year. Just keep an annual folder of these POs. And if something happens, you can pull that folder out, and you can, it might take you a few minutes, but you can go through it and you can pull everything for that piece of equipment in a timely manner. I want to share a story with you about how important record keeping is. I was in the middle of a renovation of a small building on the pad site at Blount County that became our learning lab. And I had a fantastic facilities manager and a couple of team members. They were very, they could renovate buildings. So they knew a lot about what they were doing. So we were doing this renovation in-house. And in addition, my building manager also ran the building. So he took care of all the HVAC systems, the repairs, working with the vendors. I kept no records. I kept no files. I just had Rodney And Rodney had a stroke and could not communicate with me at all for 3 months. It was like somebody pulled the blinds down on me because I could not tell anyone what was happening in my building. And I was in the middle of a renovation and there was pressure to get that renovation done. So I had to call in, had to outsource, activate RFPs and outsource some of this work to get this building finished. And nobody was happy about it. And I don't ever want to be in that position again. So I really changed how I did business quickly. And I'm hoping that some of the information I give you today will help you avoid being in that kind of position. Some of the tracking sheets that we used, we did a major light renovation. We changed all the lights out with LED lights in our parking lot. And this was how we kept track of what was done when and what type of bulb type, and if it was working, if it wasn't working. And as the switch was made, this spreadsheet was updated. We had probably 100 lamp poles out in the parking lot and on the landscaping. So it was a pretty big undertaking. And they did it a light at a time as they had time. So it was real important that I could tell what was being done, what was finished. Every month I had to give a report to the board about where we were on this project, because it was a pretty big project, cost about $200,000 to complete, because it was a new software system and everything. So I kept pretty meticulous records about what was going on. And then here's a sample of a tracking for service and repair for Daikin. And this was our HVAC system. So you can see that, and this was before we got the new system, but over the course of 4 or 5 months in 2018, we were continually spending money repairing the boiler or the chiller, and we had failure and things like that. So when I had to write my request for a new HVAC system, I just went to the spreadsheet and I pulled all of the work that had been done, the dates that it had been done, and the amount that we spent. And that was my justification for getting a new system. And I had no problem getting it approved through my county government. Other ways that you could track your maintenance is you can use already developed building maintenance software. Some of them are very costly. Some of them are not. This link to Capterra provides a list of building maintenance software that's available on the market right now. And you can read and compare what they do and don't do. Or you can create your own system using Google Forms with a back-end spreadsheet. So if you don't have a work order system with your county or your city funding body, you can create your own work order system, and you can use a Google form to create it and submit it, and it'll go to a spreadsheet. And that way you can track what you've turned in, and you can go back into your spreadsheet as things are completed or done and make comments, provide additional information. It's a very simple and easy way to track, and you can train your staff to use the forms as well. So within this webinar, I have given you a building maintenance inventory. That's the big document. I've given you a sample of a library director's report from Blount County Public Library in April 2021 that talks about the HVAC system upgrade and shows how I put facilities, or I built a facilities report into every board report that I turned in. I've given you the Blount County Public Library Administration Services Department profile, which facilities management was part of administration, and it gives you all the roles and who was included in the facilities management team, what they did and how they worked with the administrative department. I've given you a sample capital plan, a 5-year plan that's tied to the deferred maintenance issues that I addressed in the webinar. And I've given you a spreadsheet template that you can use for maintenance tracking. Feel free to edit or use these documents however you please. And I hope that they will help you on your journey to becoming a more effective and efficient facilities manager. So that's the end of my presentation. I'm open to questions, and if anyone would like to discuss other considerations or next steps, now would be the time.
You can do that by putting your questions into the Whova app. Thank you, Casey. That was just wonderful. That's like the third time I've heard the presentation, and every time I get a little bit more out of it.
I'm so
And
glad.
Yeah, and I see things that I should even be doing in my own home. I should be documenting just a little bit better because I have issues now. And I wish I had those notes and that kind of documentation. So is there anything one specific thing that you would like to tell people if they don't get anything out of today?
Oh, keep the files, make the copies of the POs and keep the files, and learn to ask for building maintenance support using risk and hazard. It's very difficult for a funding body to deny funds when you point out the seriousness of the liability that exists in your building. It also goes on record that you reported that the liability was there. So if it's in your board notes and it's in what you turn into the county, then you're showing a trail of concern over these issues.
Very good. Excellent. Well, thank you for being here today, and thank you for everyone who attended. An evaluation is provided with this conference session, and we welcome your feedback about the session and the conference in general. Thanks,
Please.
everybody, for making the 2023 Southeast Collaborative Conference successful. Thank you, Casey.
Thank you.
Have a great day, everybody.